I once asked Eleanor why she jumped into her dad's arms with such confidence. She thought for a moment, and she said, "Because I know he loves me. Because I know he loves me." If Ben says to Eleanor, "Go on, jump, you can do it," she has total confidence, not in her own ability, but in Ben's to catch her. And to date, her confidence has not been misplaced. There are moments when my heart stops as the mum watching on. We are thinking at the moment about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We've thought about how that is someone who's with God, someone who is becoming more like Jesus, someone who is doing the things that Jesus does. We spent the last 2 weeks thinking about being a compassionate follower of Jesus, someone who knows deep down that they are loved and then able to show that love to others. Today, we're thinking about being confident, being someone who is able to stand and say, "I have full confidence in the God who will catch me." I wonder what it is, that went down, what you have confidence in. I have no longer got confidence in this stand, so there we go. I wonder what you have confidence in. Your family, your friends, your own abilities, your bank balance, the government, your health. Feels like at the moment there are lots of things that in the past we have taken for granted that now feel pretty shaky. On the global scene, I think for a long time we were pretty confident that we would have peace in Europe. That was a given. But then Russia invaded Ukraine and that was shaky. Or maybe we had confidence that the USA would have our back and then Trump got re-elected, and now that feels a little bit shaky. I know for me, I also assume that if I got ill, the NHS would have capacity to deal with me. And again, that also now feels a little bit shaky. There are lots of things that we used to take for granted that now sort of feel like maybe we can't be so confident in them anymore. But it's not just like the news out there, is it? It's personal stuff within our own lives and within the lives of those around us. Just this week, I was away for a couple of days and I got a text message with news of 3 people who both had significant things in our wider church community that is shaking them. Things can feel pretty shaky, can't they? So what can we put our confidence in? How can we stand as confident followers of Jesus? Well, Jesus tells this story. I'm just going to get this out. Jesus tells a story. And in this story, there are 2 men. They both are building houses. And when they finish these houses, they are met with a massive storm. One house stands, one house falls to the ground. The difference is on what they chose to build upon. One builds with sand. Now, I love sand. I love going to the beach. I love, that feeling where you take your shoes and socks off and you just put your feet in the sand. Anyone else like sand between their toes? Got a few nods, yeah. Some people hate it. I love it. My children hate it, which is really annoying because they're like, "Oh, it's got sand on my toes." I'm like, that's the point of a beach. Anyway, I digress. I love sand. I love how my 3-year-old can spend hours just playing with sand and building sandcastles. I love sand, but it's not very stable, is it? As anyone who's built a sandcastle near my 3-year-old will testify to as soon as she jumps on it once you have finished it. Sand is easy to be destroyed. It is not very strong. The other one, though, builds his house on a rock. I was very grateful for this rock that I found in the church garden earlier. On a rock. A rock that is strong and durable. A rock that is not going anywhere. One of them built his house on a rock, which I'm going to have to put down now, otherwise my arm is going to drop off. I think I just broke the table. It's pretty strong, that rock. And Jesus starts with these words. He says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. Who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. You see, Jesus in this story is claiming to be a place, or he's teaching a place where we can find secure footing. A solid place to build our lives on. There is something about him, something about what he says that we can trust. And if we actually put them into practice, that no matter the level of tragedy or uncertainty, no matter the storm in our lives, we can be held. We can be confident. And when those first people gathered round Jesus to hear this story, and he started talking about a rock they would have immediately remembered. 46 times in the Old Testament, God is described as a rock. A place of salvation, a place of security, a place that they can run to, a firm place in the midst of chaos. And so they would have gone, is he claiming to be like that God? Is this Jesus we see in front of us claiming to be Yahweh, the one that we have read about and know about? We've seen something like this before. Jesus is saying he is the rock, the place of salvation. That's a pretty bold claim, isn't it? To say, I'm the place of safety. If you build your lives on what I'm saying, you will never, ever be shaken. I mean, if someone from the government said that, we'd be rightly cynical. If they were like, don't worry guys, if you just do what I say, everything's going to be fine. We'd be like, yeah, maybe not. I can't even make that claim to my own children. I can't even look them in the eye and say, I will always be there for you, because one day I won't. Because I am temporary and finite. But Jesus makes this claim, that he is permanent. That he is not going anywhere. One, because he is eternal and lasts forever. But two, because he is not fickle. He doesn't say one thing one day and then another thing another day. He isn't double-minded. He stands firm. He is the place we can stand with confidence. The one we can jump to without fear, because we know he loves us. And so he will catch us. On him, we can be confident. I'm going to invite Val up. He's going to share a little bit of her experience of God being that place of refuge, that security in her own life. But Val, why don't you start off by telling us, have you been a Christian your whole life? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Right, I was brought up in a church-going family. I think they actually started going to church when they had me, because they suddenly decided, yeah, we want to bring our child up as a Christian. So, I mean, I don't think we were absolutely, through that time, completely regular churchgoers, but there was the link. And when I was 3, I started going to what was called Sunday school in those days, and I absolutely loved it, and soaked up all that was said. But I didn't actually have a major encounter with God until I was 14. And that was when I decided, my whole life is going to be about you, Jesus. And I continued with that. I continued, and I was very fortunate because we had, at the place where we'd moved to a few years before, in a family crisis, there were Christians of my own age group, and I got to know them, and they were an incredible support in me getting going as a Christian. So that took off. I went through school. There were ups and downs in the family and in my own life, but all of them fairly weatherable. And I went to college to train to be a teacher, and whilst I was there, I met the man who became my first husband, and he was also training to be a teacher. He was also a Christian. We were both in the Christian Union together at college, and when we finished college, we had a bit of problems sorting out getting jobs at first, but we did, and we also got married as soon as we finished college. And really, I felt we were on the same page, basically on the same page. We were both making that progress together. We had 2 lovely children, and but it was the 18th year of our marriage. He suddenly disappeared one day. He went out to work in the morning and then vanished. And the next day I received a letter which made it absolutely clear that he wasn't coping and that he felt he was better out of our lives. And because of the letter, I contacted hospitals and so on initially. I contacted his work had contacted me to say, your husband hasn't come into work today, is he ill? That was the first I knew that he'd gone missing. And then the police came, and I think they were about to dig up the patio actually to see whether there were any hints about what had happened to him. But there was nothing. They consulted all his contacts, the people that he played football with, his colleagues. Nobody knew where he'd gone. And the police absolutely assured me that he would have told somebody of his intentions. He hadn't. So for 6 weeks, he was completely missing. The police had told me they would continue to look for him. And then suddenly I got a hint from one of his previous employers who said they'd had a phone call about a job, and that they'd wanted a reference, and he just told them at the time, said how he'd been, but he assumed they were going to send a letter or something. They didn't. But this was the first, and he contacted me, and because of where he thought it was, I thought, it might be near where his sister is, but again, no contact. But he'd remembered the place wrongly. But anyway, I informed the police of my own bits of information that had been pieced together. And eventually they found him, found where he was working, and he didn't want to make contact at all. But they told him, look, whatever else you do, you just need to make that contact, and we will seek assurances from you. We won't give her any information about where you are. You make this contact in your own time. Eventually he did, and basically I suppose he'd had some sort of breakdown, but he'd started a new life elsewhere. And he had managed to find a job, and he'd managed to find somebody else who would become his partner, and he felt he probably shouldn't see the children because they might be confused by it all. But fortunately, both me and his new partner said, no, you must keep your relationship up with the children. So eventually he re-established that. But that was the end of my first marriage. And so that's the biggest thing I think I've had to weather. But I got through and I got a second chance with Jim.
Before you go, what I'd love to hear is, because that's a massive storm, that's huge. Like, that could knock down a lot of people. Where was God in all of that? How was your faith in all of that?
Well, initially, I was just dumbfounded, which is unusual for me, I think. I didn't know how to relate to God because I'd got all these systems set up for relating to him. I tried most of the time because my mind is always busy. I tried through most of my life to be in conversation with God in my head, not just to be talking to myself or dealing with my own thoughts or all the things that invaded. But for a while, I just didn't know how to do that. I just didn't know how to do it because I just was stunned and in shock. And I remember I couldn't sleep either. I couldn't sleep. I thought, when I'm finding it so hard to talk to you, I'd write things down. I wrote down lists of all that needed doing because all the threads had to be picked up. I had to keep life going. I'd still got the 2 children. I'd still got a job. I still got a mortgage to pay. But the other thing I used to do was hold a holding cross. I don't know if you've seen those ever. And just hold that. Some of that is just a blur, just an absolute blur. But I was absolutely certain he was there with me in this. And slowly, I began to pick up the threads again. But it took a while. Yeah, but he was there. He was there. I knew he was there. But I couldn't do the usual stuff for relating to him. I suppose in the end he sort of broke through.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Val, for sharing that. That sense of God holding us when we can't do anything else. That when everything else has crashed down, that he is that rock, that unchangeable one, that one who is not going anywhere. We can be confident in him. We can be confident that if we throw ourselves at him, he will catch us because he loves us. Just one thing as I end. There's this sense in this story that both of these 2 men, the one who built their lives on sand and the one who builds their life on rock, both of them hear Jesus' words. The difference between the 2 of them is that one of them hears and puts into practice. One of them hears the things that Jesus has taught and says, yeah, I'm going to try and live out like this. And so I guess I end with just an invitation. This story comes at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, which is a collection of Jesus' teachings. You can find it in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. My invitation is read those chapters and pick one thing this week that you're going to try out. It might be that you're not going to judge other people. It might be that you're going to pray for somebody who has hurt you. It might be that you're going to be generous, but you're going to do it secretly. It might be that you're going to keep your promises. There are whole loads of things Jesus invites us to. But my invitation for all of us is this week to read Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. And not just to read it, but to pick one thing and put it into practice. Because that is how we build our lives on the rock. That is how we are able to stand strong and be confident in Jesus. That is how we trust him, the one who isn't going anywhere. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you. You are the rock, the one we can stand